You're listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast. All right, well, we're back with another edition of the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast, and I have the usual crew here, Jordan, Chris, and Robert, and I'm Kevin.
Hello.
Hi. So how's everybody doing?
Good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Chris, they can't hear you when you nod.
Yes. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, shouldn't they see him? Isn't this all about video?
Oh, yeah. Did you bring the camera?
No. Did you?
No.
Damn.
We're really prepared.
I did borrow 2 cameras from friends recently, though, to start the vidcast of my musical adventures.
Really?
That's right. Yeah, he has no excuse.
We're capturing really exciting things like stuffing envelopes and practicing.
Chris, of all people, has no excuse because his wife works in film and video. So, all right, well, we're going to start off this episode with a little news segment, and bringing us the news is our fair Jordan.
For our news section, we have a local story from here in Portland that made national news. Music Millennium, which has been a pillar in the Portland music scene for over 30 years, finally closed their main location, citing escalating rent and the continued slump in CD sales. Open quote, record stores used to be almost like community centers, especially in a place like Portland where the rainy climate and the long-playing record albums seem perfectly matched for each other, says Terry Courier, Music Millennium owner. Neighborhood stores aren't the essential part of everybody's day-by-day life as they once were, close quote. So what do you guys think?
Well, one of many record store closures.
They're such a great record store, though. Yeah. It's not like Tower Records closing.
No.
It's a really special place.
I mean, I was at the gym one day working out, and it was like one of the national news channels was on, and they were talking about it, and they always seem to spin it towards downloads being the issue. That may be part of the issue here. This particular store, people who aren't in Portland, it's next to impossible to find a spot to park down there, and it's like become the trendy area of town, and so that was a huge issue of this particular store, but they will be missed. They always had lots of in-store performances and had a stage there. You've played there, Chris.
I played there probably 4 or 5 times. It's such a great place. But they're going to do in-stores at their other location, which is it's kind of a sad story, but at least they've still got a place in Portland.
Yeah.
You know, they're not totally going out of business, but
there are lots of things that music stores can do to stay alive and part of the community, and people still need a place to go to see live shows and get purchase things besides CDs.
I think for me it was more the end of the era of people going to the record store and finding out what's new and hanging out and talking to the people.
I think there'll always be collectors.
Yeah, there'll always be collectors, but I think most people are just getting their information on the internet, and I don't necessarily even think that downloads are responsible for putting a store like that out of business as much as just Amazon.com,
right,
and other places like that are selling those albums much cheaper.
Was that you that was talking about just sort of cross-pollinating business plans, like about a cafe, bookstore, CD store? Is that you?
I think Dylan and I might have been talking about that.
Oh, that's right.
Dylan, who works at CD Baby, not Bob Dylan.
Really, Kevin?
Just to clear this up.
Was that him when we interviewed
I think
him?
it was.
Okay.
It was in that interview where we were talking about.
I guess you'll hear about that in a future podcast.
Yeah.
But he had some interesting ideas about music retail and how it might have to be combined with other business plans rather than just buying music to become successful.
And I think that's what Starbucks is trying to do, but I don't think Starbucks is ever going to take it beyond just a handful of albums, and they're just trying to get people that want to grab something right off the counter as they buy their latte. But yeah, I think if people get creative, I mean, you got to give people a reason to come to your store and pay the extra couple bucks that they could save getting it online. And
it always surprised me that more record stores didn't sell like record players, CD players, stereos, the things that you play the music on. Like, it's kind of funny that so many record stores, like, why can't you go to the CD store and, buy a CD player to play the CDs they sell?
It's called Best Buy.
Yeah.
Big box stores putting everybody out of business. That's who's to blame. No, but it's a development that's probably happening. Something like this is probably happening in just about every city in America. The old store that's been there for 30 years that just can't make it anymore. It's definitely the sign of the times, but I think the media always tends to spin it on people getting music illegally and iTunes. It's all iTunes' fault. And I don't necessarily think that's the whole case. It's part of it, but I think there's other factors out there that people just aren't going to record stores and don't shop that way anymore. Well, let's move on to our episode recap, where we're going to talk about the last episode, where we had a band on there, Moving Rushmore, and really got a lot of attention for the music for the vidcast they did. So let's just open up. What are your general comments, thoughts on doing a vidcast?
It was fascinating that they had that much forethought and merchandise and vidcasting and all this stuff before they ever even went into the studio. Like, that was amazing to me. They went at it totally backwards, but it worked for them. Yeah,
they must have spent so much time doing a lot of legwork, just constantly. And you know, on top of that, they mentioned several times in the course of the vidcast that they were practicing like 6 hours a day, 4 times a week, and it's like, my gosh, how do you have time to find all that stuff on the internet, get all that stuff done, and then have jobs and lives?
Well, they had a lot of people working with them. Yeah. They had a sound guy. They had the graphic designer.
Yeah, Tim, who does the vidcast.
And
I think a lot of that probably came together, though. You know, I mean, I'm sure they were like, we're going to start a band, and they probably just started talking to everybody they know. I mean, like, everyone that was helping them out also had a history with them.
Well, I thought the one thing I thought was interesting, like you were saying, is how thought out everything was. It wasn't like, I'm sure they had some haphazard things where, you know, they just stumbled into things or thought, hey, maybe we should try this. But, you know, going in and just, you know, they had only been together for a couple months and they already had all that stuff together and ready to go. And there was one point, I don't know if you guys saw the episode, it was one of the more recent ones where the bass player, Dave, kind of has a reminder to everyone saying, you know, we only have been together for 4 months because just the vidcast has become so popular.
They expect them to have a really long set.
Well, right? Yeah, the vidcast has become so popular and all these people are coming to the shows that, you know, they've never played. They played, you know, a handful of shows. People are coming just expecting these rock stars, and it's like that just had built up so much anticipation that, you know, he's like, you know, we've only been together 4 months.
I got such a kick out of when they were going to that gig and he was like, yeah, we haven't played in 5 days. I was like, oh man, you guys are a young band. You're lucky now if you get together more than once before a show. It's like, at least with my bands, maybe other people are more diligent, but
yeah. Well, I think, you know, I think they're doing the right thing and putting in a lot of time and effort to get it going. Then once you get things moving, it's easier to, you know, sit back a little bit and coast a little bit. You got to take a breather at some point. But specifically about the vidcast, I mean, what did you guys think about just as an idea of promotion and stuff? Did you have any specific thoughts? I know, Chris, you mentioned already you're thinking about doing one now.
I already started, yeah. We're going on a tour soon, so I figured we'd take the approach of like what goes into planning, booking, promoting a tour, practicing for it, actually going on it, being in the van. The only thing is it's going to be a little more budget on my end. I could tell they had really good equipment and were really careful with the blue screens and they're very professional. Mine's going to be a little more Sony camera.
I think that works too. You know, he does mention that the quality, and that probably is why they got featured on iTunes. Like I mentioned, I came across them because there's hardly any bands doing vidcasts. You would think there would be tons of them, but even like big name acts, there's just not many of people doing them and doing them well. And so if you followed like podcasts in iTunes like I have for a while, it's been the same featured vidcasts for almost a year. Like Wilco is one of the featured vidcasts and they have 2 episodes, and one of them I don't even think is like over a minute long. They're just really short. I can't remember what, but they have 2 and it's been over a year, but it's still featured just because there's nobody doing it. And
well, I think too, I mean, vidcasting is even newer than podcasting, so people, you know, it takes a while to educate yourself. I know that it took you and I a while to figure out how to podcast. We still don't quite know if we're doing it right.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's with every new medium that comes out, you got to figure out how to tailor what you're doing to fit that the best. I think what's helped Moving Rushmore is theirs seems to have kind of an idea of what they want to do with it. We're going to take you and follow along with the band behind the scenes. We're going to be ourselves. You're going to meet us. Where some of the other vidcasts I've seen out there, it's been all about, hey, look at us, we're rock stars, or we could be goofy on camera and just keep posting it. Here's us doing dumb stuff on the road, and doesn't really have a point. That doesn't interest people as much as just having that storyline that's kind of going through there.
I think that's why it works for them. And people watching, like their fans or listeners watching, they follow the whole process, and you sort of feel like you're getting to know these guys, even though you're not actually in person. But, they don't, in the beginning, the first episode, they don't even have a bass player yet. So you get to watch them build from the ground up. And
one of the last episodes, the drummer
I missed that one.
Give it away.
left. So
What, Peasy was having a kid?
No, he was one of the guys that did have a kid earlier on. They didn't really say. I think it was some stuff that was going on before the band, that he was moving back to his hometown or something where family was, where it'd be easier for them to survive, survival.
Right.
I know with when putting together our podcast and for CD Baby and just reading a lot about it, iTunes basically doesn't really say why they feature certain things. They'll say that, they just look for quality and something that grabs their attention. And I have a feeling that with vidcasts, they screen those a lot more closely to see what's coming in, because there isn't as much out there, and they want to make sure that they draw attention to whatever they can that's good. And right now, I think it's something that if you jump on, there's a good open field for.
Everyone, please wait until I'm done and I've posted mine on iTunes, and then you can all rush to make them.
I think iTunes actually takes really well to compliments. So if we were to just, put in a good word here and there, perhaps on the podcast, just about how much we love iTunes and the people that work there.
How great they are. They're really amazing.
How handsome.
No, so there doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason. Even with, we deal with iTunes here at CD Baby, we don't know anybody in the podcasting department have any inside tips for you, but he did mention in his in the Moving Rushmore episode, they mentioned that they had a bunch of their fans vote for it, and I don't think that really had much to do with it. I think it really was that they screen video closely just for the nature of video. I'm sure they don't want any explicit stuff out there that's not marked explicit, so I have a feeling they probably screen that a little closer than just audio. So they probably just saw a band doing something interesting. They don't have many good vidcasts going for music, and so we'll feature them. And they're still featured. When I first came across them, I think it was at the beginning of summer, they ended up being put like right on the front homepage of iTunes. I mentioned they were on the front page of the podcast section, but they were on the front page of iTunes, like just in the featured podcast, where they have a little segment that says featured podcast.
Vidcasting is very similar to podcasting. iTunes has a really good setup for it, and you can subscribe, so that each new video downloads into your iTunes player.
Yeah, and it will take a little bit more internet capabilities. If you're on dial-up, checking out vidcasts may not be for you, but I think pretty much everyone's out of the dark ages now. So for anyone out there who's thinking of doing a vidcast, you want to keep them shorter, 10 minutes probably tops, just because of that download size. And it's easier than planning out a 40-minute podcast. Just edit some video, make it interesting, and you never know. You might you might have people coming to your first show wearing your T-shirt like Moving Rushmore did.
Do you know, I forget if they said in the interview, but do you know how it's been like affecting their sales or generating like a demand?
I'm sure they're doing well. I think he said they'd had about 11,000 downloads of the vidcast.
How long have they been at it now?
I think when I talked to them, which was last month, it was about, I think they were going on 6 months. So it's probably been about 7 months.
They're not a year old yet.
No, we'll keep checking back and see if they're still plugging along. The last cliffhanger was they lost their drummer, and I've been through that, and that's tough, replacing a drummer.
Get a Dr. Rhythm.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone's just using laptops these days. There's so much more room in the van that way.
Hi, everybody. This is Robert. Sorry to interrupt the roundtable discussion. We'll get back to that in just a second. We're trying out a new section on music and technology, and we'll just call it Technology is Your Friend. Maybe that'll change. We'll see. Or this segment is about video. These days, a band or musician really has to do more than be a band or musician. In our culture saturated with media, it really takes a lot to stand out. And video is really one of the most compelling forms of communication available. We've been focusing a lot on video in our recent podcast episodes, partly because it's just a great medium that musicians overlook, but also because recent advancements in technology, as well as the proliferation of websites like YouTube, have made it much easier for artists to use video to their advantage. Luckily, it's becoming a lot less expensive to do this, and with a little know-how, a camera, and a computer, you can do a lot of really neat stuff. I'm not going to go too much into how to make a good video, but rather just offer some technical resources. But I did find some great free vidcasts in iTunes on how to do basic filming. It's a show called Acceptable TV that VH1 does, but there's a free vidcast in iTunes. If you just go to your iTunes player, look in the iTunes store, just search for Acceptable TV, you'll find it. And that's hosted by School of Rock comedian Jack Black. So I'm going to start out with what you need, the basics, to start vidcasting or making your own videos for YouTube. You're obviously going to need a camera with video capabilities, a computer, an external hard drive, and some sort of editing software. There's really, at this point, there's tons of new and affordable cameras out there, many under $300, and I'll let you do your own bargain hunting, but Casio does have a new camera designed specifically for YouTubers. It's a digital camera called Casio's Elixum, or Exilium, or Exilium, one of those. It has a wide viewing screen, has an enhanced video capability, and included software that helps you upload it to YouTube. So it's kind of like just a little point and shoot. If you check out the link on the website, I will have all this information a little bit more, so be sure to check that out. As far as what computer to use, I would definitely recommend a Mac. Macs come with almost everything you need to make quality video. You know, iLife 08, which is going out with computers now, has support for vidcasting. GarageBand, which ships with the computers, has a podcasting suite. If you get a .Mac account, they can host your videos. But if you have a PC, that's fine too. There's a lot of good programs out there that you can use as well. As far as an external hard drive goes, there are actually just tons out there, and they're just getting cheaper and cheaper. I'll let you choose that for yourself, but I did see a 500 gigabyte hard drive, external FireWire drive, on the internet for under $200, and that's a lot cheaper than they used to be. As far as editing software, you can use, if you're using Apple, it comes with iMovie HD, and you can publish video podcasts in the iTunes directory using iWeb. iStage is another video podcasting software for Macintosh that's integrated with .Mac and iLife. And then for advanced users, Apple's Final Cut Studio is really the cream of the crop. For PC, there's a program for Windows called Vlogit. There's also a program called Movie Maker and Photo Story. And then the best solution for Windows is probably the Adobe Premiere Pro package, which comes with Adobe Audition. Let's say you filmed and edited your video. Where would you put it, and how do you get it there? Besides uploading your video to a networking site like YouTube, it's important to broaden the ways in which your fans can see and access your content. You can use your own website and hosting service, such as we do on HostBaby, and then upload a blogging platform such as WordPress or Movable Type. Or you can use the hosting service that these sort of companies provide for you. Usually it's pretty cheap, between $5 and $20 a month. All these companies, WordPress, TypePad, Blogger, and Movable Type, I believe do offer hosting as well as their platform, which you can download for free. Okay, hopefully that's enough to get you started. I know it can be confusing, and my little tutorial just brushes the surface, but there are many simple ways to publish video, and most of these websites are very much sympathetic to the technophobe. But if you get overwhelmed, start slow. Record a video and put it on your computer. That's step one. If you get this far, you can pat yourself on the back and say, "Hey Joe, we're halfway there." Vlogging on your own website can be tough. let us know if you have any questions or concerns you think that we should address on the podcast. And do check out the link on the website. I have all this information, plus links to the websites that I've mentioned.
Well, this week we do have some listener feedback. A person by the name of Chad who lives in Montana. He emailed us and he was saying, hey guys, why don't you do a show on horror stories? But I said, man, just type that up a little bit more and give me the details and I'll read that on the air. So I've got his horror story here. I don't know if we'll ever have a full episode of horror stories, maybe for Halloween, I don't know. Might be a bit depressing to hear about. This is a bit of a lengthy email, but I'm going to read the good parts here. So basically, at the point where this happened to him, he was living down in Burbank. And this is Chad talking, not me. So I came across an ad for a production house that works with bands and helps them get connected to labels and whatnot. They were in our area, Burbank. So I gave them a call. They requested I send a kit. I did. They listened to it. Next thing I know, we're meeting him at the studio. He says he wants to produce a demo for us and pitch it to labels. We say yes and begin recording. And so at that point, they start tracking with this guy and start to not get the greatest vibes going. He says they're relaying tracks 20, 40 times. I mean, this guy is just like starting to be a control freak. So it goes on. He says, when it came to percussion or keys, he guilted us into hiring some of his musician friends for around like $250 a song. He said, not bad for musicians, but remember, this was all his project and we found ourselves funding it. By this time, we have months worth of work done for 4 songs. We recorded each song so many times that it sounded fake and not like us. He turned our rock sound into a pop bubblegum rock. It was horrible, but he was talking to label people and things looked good. So, water's getting rough, but they're still thinking, oh, there's hope at the end of this tunnel. He's talking to labels for us and we're in LA and, So the songs were all about 90% done when he drops a contract on us. He tells me while in the studio that we need to get it signed before we can finish the song. I tell him I need to run it past our lawyer, and I'm sure he won't have a problem with it. After all, we knew this producer very well by then and trusted him. This made the guy all mad, and he went off on how lawyers screw indie bands over and how we're pretty much making a mistake by running it by our lawyer. Later that week, after faxing the contract to their lawyer, the lawyer calls, a bit frantic, asking if we've signed anything. I tell him no, and he started to laugh. He said it was a horrible contract and that he would basically own us when it came to anything connected to what we recorded. He even mocked the contract and how poorly it was written. Anyway, we tell the producer no, and he gets angry, then calms down enough to tell us we can buy our masters from him, which we didn't. And so they then took the 90% done tracks they had done and put the music up on MySpace themselves. And later on, it's funny, he goes on to say that that guy contacted them saying he was going to sue them for putting the tracks up on MySpace and all that. It's just those same predators you see over and over again. It's just so frustrating when people fall into that. And moral of the story, watch out for people like that. Anybody who's selling you anything saying they'll get you to a label, run for your life.
Especially if they really do work for a label.
Yes.
Get your contracts up front.
The funny thing was, or it's not funny, is just how I've even worked with engineers just doing stuff on my own where it's like I feel like I'm working for them. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm paying you to track my songs. Why do I feel like I'm working for you now? I mean, that's a big warning sign no matter who you are or what situation you're in. If you're putting up the money to record, that's your project. They're there to do what you need them to do. If they don't want to work on the project, you can take your money somewhere else. So don't fall into the same trap Chad fell into. Unfortunately, half the people listening probably still No, but anyway, so if anyone else out there has a story they want to share, we'll be glad to read it on the podcast for other listeners to hear. You can email us at info@cdbabypodcast.com. We'll share it with everybody. Well, I guess that'll do it for this Roundtable edition of the podcast. Be sure to check out the website, cdbabypodcast.com. Lots of great resources on there just beyond the podcast. And I'm sure it wouldn't hurt if you went to iTunes and said all sorts of great things about the show. You never know, maybe they'll feature our podcast. Who knows? So, all right, well, we'll catch you guys next time. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Music Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.
Me, which is it? Please tell me the truth you want to say it, but you don't want to display it. She was too young to be wasted.